Hi. So one of the requirements I have of creating a solid financial plan is to have the proper legal documents in place. Unfortunately, this is an area that I find most people are likely to be missing those appropriate documents. And since I can't offer specific legal advice, I need to send people out to find an attorney who will work with them. A few months ago, I was introduced to trust and wills and saw how referring clients to them can provide a very cost effective way for my clients to prepare their legal documents. But also, it provides a way for me to follow the progress of my clients to make sure they're on, um, staying on track to get the things done that they need to have done. So Michael Salazar is my account executive with Trust and Wills, and I invited him to explain how his company functions and how Trust and Wills might be a service that you can use, whether or not you're working with me directly or whether you just want to access Trust and Wills on your own to create your legal documents. So with that said, Michael, welcome. Can you give us a little bit of a background about your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Drew. Excited to be here and share a little bit more information about Trust and Will. So we were really founded because our founders felt like there wasn't a solution for them when it came to estate planning, right? They were still building their wealth, they were still building their family, and they didn't feel like they needed to spend $3,000 to $5,000 to set up an estate plan with a local attorney. So they wanted to build something a little bit more modern. Trust and Will has now arrived as the easiest way for American families to create their estate plan online. So we do offer a self-guided process with, of course, different forms of support that you can receive as you go through. We ask you one question at a time and piece together state-specific documents in any of the 50 states. You're going to get a plan that's totally comprehensive, totally customized, and state-specific. And we're now working with advisors to allow for them to offer a more accessible option. So the focus here for us is really accessibility. How do we ensure that every American family has the chance to achieve peace of mind and have the chance to start building generational wealth? So that's what we're all about here. And what we'll do today is talk a little bit more about education, which I think is maybe the biggest missing piece right now in terms of why people don't take that first step and either meet with an attorney or build their plan online.
Okay, great. I do, it's probably makes sense for us to both point out up front. Just as I said, I don't provide legal advice. Your company does not provide legal advice. In many states, you have partnered with attorneys who can step in and provide that level of advice. One of the things that I've recommended to clients that I've referred to your services is that go ahead and do the groundwork with you, and then if the client feels that it's appropriate, then they can step over to have an attorney look over things. But it's still going to save them a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the hurdles that people have a hard time getting past, that they have to spend money to save money. When I send people out and say, go get a trust or a will or whatever is deemed appropriate, well, they're getting hit with big ticket charges, $2,000, $3,000.
Mhm.
So, they're not dead yet. They don't see the need for this. It's really for their heirs and all. So they procrastinate on that. But what I like about what your company has done is that it's done so much to remove what should be the barrier of paying for the services. So
Exactly. Exactly.
okay, so let's start with the whole idea of what happens when somebody passes away. We're talking now at the level of a will or a trust. We're not getting into some of the other legal documents as you offer as part of your overall suite. But let's talk about what happens if somebody passes away, the different scenarios that might occur.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's really three different things that can happen when you pass away, or three different conditions that you can be under. First of all is dying intestate. And dying intestate means that you pass away without any sort of estate plan in place. So you don't have a will, you don't have a trust. At that point, the process is probably going to be pretty difficult for the people that you care about. If you don't leave behind any wishes, ultimately it's going to be up to a judge and to the state through a long legal process called probate to decide how everything is broken down, how everything is going to be distributed. A lot of Americans pass away intestate. It's probably about 50 to 60% of American families don't have a plan in place. So a lot of Americans are passing away with no plan to leave behind. And that can put families in a tough situation, right? In a time where they should be reflecting, remembering, mourning. It can often lead to unnecessary drama, unnecessary division, and pretty tough financial strain sometimes as well, as the cost of probate can be very high. Now, the second condition is going to be if you pass away without a will. Having a will is definitely better than not having anything at all, as it is going to help inform the judge and the state and your family on what your wishes are, how you want everything broken down, where you want your assets to go. The last one is going to be a trust, which is the strongest form of an estate plan that you can have, which strictly says, hey, here is everything that I have. Here's how I want it distributed. You can add conditions to your distribution to even say, I don't want my son getting everything outright. I want him to get 10% at this age, 30% at this age, and the rest at this other age, right? So you can get a lot more particular in terms of how you want things broken down. But the big thing to focus on here is, ideally, we don't want to pass away intestate, which means not having a plan in place at all.
Okay. So intestate, you go through probate, but it's the court that decides how things are going to be divvied up, and they're going to appoint a guardian to do that. It's not, you don't get to name that person. With a will, you will also go through probate, but you'll be able to say how you want your estate divided among your heirs. And there are different, in that you can name your executor in that scenario. That's the person who's going to quarterback the whole thing. Executor or maybe co-executors. Executor, how involved is being the executor of an estate?
Yeah, it's pretty involved. So that's really going to be the person that's going to be acting in your best interest when you pass away. So they're going to be responsible for distributing an estate's assets, interacting with the judge, interacting with attorneys after you die in accordance with your will. So they're going to have a lot of responsibilities. They're really going to be the person, that you trust, that is good with money, that is organized, that understands, your family dynamics or the dynamics between you and the people that you care about. That's the person that you're going to want to assign as an executor. On the other hand, you have your trustee, right? So an executor is only if you have a will in place. A trustee is somebody that you name to act in a very similar role if you pass away without a trust. Now, think of the trustee more so as somebody who manages the trust over time, right? So they're going to be the person that's actually responsible for managing the trust, getting assets to beneficiaries at the appropriate time in the appropriate manner, exactly to the trust specifications. So an executor is going to be much shorter time served, I guess you can think of it as, right? That's probably going to be 2 years in that role at the most. A trustee can be serving in that role for decades if that's what the trust specifications are. If they say, hey, I want my son to get this percent at these ages, that may be decades from now. The trustee is still going to be in that role, so it's got to be someone that is going to act in your best interest and follow your wishes.
You mentioned the amount of time required to settle an estate within the context of a will. You mentioned 2 years, and I don't think that's out of the norm at all, especially in these post-COVID or for people who unfortunately passed away during the COVID pandemic, when courts were not operating at full speed by any means. I happen to know of circumstances where settling some of these estates have really been stretched out, and that can put a big strain on families. So anything that anyone who's watching this who wants to make life easier for their heirs, I personally, I lean towards creating trust. That's a bias on my part. That doesn't mean it works for everybody, but I think it just makes things easier.
100%. And something I want to just kind of throw in here. It's important to acknowledge that setting up a trust isn't necessarily going to benefit you during your lifetime, right?
Right.
It's important to acknowledge that and understand that. What it is going to do is it's going to make the process so much easier for the people that you care about when you're no longer here. For that reason, setting up a trust, although it can be, emotionally tolling, it's one of the most selfless things that you can do. So just think about it that way. It's not, hey, I'm going to pass away one day. What's my plan? But it's, hey, I'm going to do this because there's people in my life that I care about. When I'm no longer here, I want to make sure that they have an easy time getting through that process.
Yeah. And I guess we should also point out that there are a number of different types of trusts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, there's multiple different types of trust: revocable living trust, irrevocable life insurance trust,
Mhm.
special needs trust, charitable remainder. The list goes on and on and on and on. In the context of trust and will, just so you know, the only type of trust we currently offer as of January 12th, 2023, is going to be the revocable living trust. That word revocable is the most important thing there. That means that it can be edited or changed throughout your life. So just because you finish your estate plan with us does not mean that is set in stone and that's the plan you're going to pass away with. Your life changes. Your estate plan should as well. So when you have a new child, you have a grandchild, you move to a new state, you buy or sell your home, you can come back to us and make sure that that estate plan is up to date. Really gives you a ton of flexibility to ensure that your estate plan always reflects your current situation.
Right. And if you look at the financial demographics of the United States, I think the majority of people are going to want to have more of that type of a trust as opposed to the ILET trust or some of the other trusts that are available out there where you want to go do some advanced planning with an attorney. But
Mm-hmm.
for the majority of people who don't have, estate tax issues to be concerned with, I think the type of trust that you can offer is a great place to start. Now they might find out they want to move forward beyond that, but it's a good starting point. So
Exactly.
how does so thanks, this is all really good information, but let's talk about how somebody utilizes your services.
Yeah. Yeah,
First of
absolutely.
all, they want to go to my website, right? And they want to click on the link that I've created so they can get right over to you. They don't have to do any searching. So if they're
Exactly.
watching this on my video pages, they'll be able to find a link on the homepage.
Exactly. So in order to get started, all you got to do is click through that link. So either find it on Drew's website or just shoot him a quick email and say, hey, I'm interested in using Trust and Will. How do I get started? He'll send you a link. You'll click through that link in order to get started. You'll get 10% off automatically just for knowing Drew. And then another cool thing is Drew is going to have the ability to track your progress. So he's actually going to be able to hold you accountable, make sure that you follow through and get your plan done. You'll create an account using an email and password. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to ask you one question at a time. So it really keeps things light. You don't feel overwhelmed. You just focus on that one question in front of you. And then we put you exactly where you need to be and ask the other questions that we need answers for. Now we have education built into our entire process, so you can learn as you go.
Mm-hmm.
You can work at your own pace. So if you need to press pause and come back to it on the next day, you can do that. And then we also have a full support team available via chat or by phone. So if you need help, if you need more education, we have a team available to assist you.
So the way I've explained this to people before is, when you go to an attorney, and I hope anything I say during our conversation here is not being critical of attorneys. They provide very good service for what they do. But when you're going to an attorney and you're working up some of these documents, primarily you're dealing with a paralegal, and the paralegal is asking you the questions, and you're responding to those questions no differently than going on your website. This is my analogy. It's probably no different than going on your website, and instead of having a human being there asking you the questions, we've got this system set up in place to ask you the questions. So you're cutting out so many of those costs involved with just working with human bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll preface this by, first of all, acknowledging, like you did, Drew, we don't want to speak bad about attorneys. Our mission here at Trust and Will is not to replace estate planning attorneys or make them go extinct. The focus for us, like I said at the top of the call, is to make estate planning more accessible. Now, what you just described, the process of a client going into an office, interacting with a paralegal, being asked questions one at a time, it's incredibly similar to our process. We're going to ask the same questions. We use software and, for lack of a better term, templates that are identical to what a paralegal or an attorney is using in their office. Really, the main difference is being there physically with the person, and the fact that with trust and will, you can work at your own pace. You're not going to be charged more if you are sitting there thinking about, well, who would be the backup guardian for my kids if I was to pass away, right? If
Right.
you don't if you can't make that decision right then and there, you're not going to be penalized for it if you're using trust and will, which I think is one of the major advantages.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Once I create my trust or will online,
Mhm.
I print it out, but you will also have a copy of it. You have a
Yeah,
vault.
absolutely. So once the client completes their plan, they have the ability to review it right away. They can print it out if they want to print it out and have documents in hand same day. They can do that for free. What's also free and probably more popular is to wait 5 business days and receive a physical copy from us. We'll send it to your home address. Along with the documents, you're going to get instructions for notarization. So you're going to know exactly what needs to be signed, what needs to be notarized, and who your witnesses can and cannot be. In almost all states, as of right now, these documents still do require a wet ink signature and notarization. So you can take them to, UPS store, bank, credit union. Most of the time, those will be fine solutions. Mobile notary works as well. Get the documents notarized, and then of course, and maybe Drew will be willing to assist in this process or provide more education around the process, be a second set of eyes. If you set up a trust with us, trust funding is maybe the most important thing to put a bow on all of it, to say, hey, everything has been retitled. We're all good to go here.
Right. I'm glad you bring that up. That's a very important point there. If someone's got a trust, but the assets are not titled in the name of the trust, it doesn't serve the very purpose it was intended to.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's something that happens far too often, whether someone's working with an attorney or an online solution,
Right.
is, yeah, I got the documents in place. I have a trust set up. Well, yes, you do technically have trust documents, but the trust hasn't been funded. So that's why we provide very specific instructions through our trust funding guide, what the next steps are, what needs to be retitled, what doesn't need to be retitled. And if you have questions during that, of course, Drew can be a second set of eyes. Also, our membership team is still going to be available if you need some help, need some clarification, or need to get pointed in the right direction during that trust funding process.
Okay. We've focused on wills and trust, obviously, in the course of this conversation, but your company offers a whole suite of legal documents, all of which I consider very important. Can you quickly go through the rundown of the different documents that are available in that suite?
Yeah, 100%. And Drew, would it be all right if I share my screen here for a visual?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Just because I'll be saying a lot of maybe new words or unfamiliar words here. I just want to make sure that
Good.
we get a nice visual. So we offer 2 different types of plans. The thing that I love about Trust and Will is that we do not offer documents a la carte. You've got to buy comprehensive plans. So either a will-based plan or a trust-based plan. The will-based plan is sort of entry-level plan. Some may say $143 for an individual, $233 for a couple. That is a flat rate, no matter how long it takes you or where you live. Typically, we're hearing $800 to $1,500 to set this up with a local attorney, depending on where you're based out of. And you're going to get the same 4 documents you would get if you were to sit down with an attorney or a paralegal. So first of all, last will and testament, right? What are your wishes? What do you want to happen to everything you've worked so hard for once you're no longer here? Also has information about final resting place. Also nomination of guardians for minor children and for pets. So a little extra peace of mind there regarding children or your furry friends. Beyond that, HIPAA authorization. The HIPAA authorization is going to authorize selected individuals to access your medical records in the case where you can't release those yourself. Living will, also known as healthcare directive. Mm-hmm. Decisions are going to be made if I can't make a decision for myself, and who's going to be acting in my best interest in that case, who's going to be making decisions on my behalf. And then durable power of attorney. what decisions are going to be made and who has the power to make these decisions, whether they be financial or personal, in the case where I go incapacitated or I go missing. So this last will and testament is the death document. The other 3 documents can still impact you while you are alive. And then really quickly, the trust-based plan, $539 for an individual, $629 for a couple. Typically, we're hearing about $2,500 to $5,000 to set this up with an attorney, depending on where you're based out of. The great thing here is that it includes the same 4 documents that are in the will-based plan. So no need to purchase both plans. You'll only get one or the other. In this case, the last will and testament, almost identical to the pour-over will. It's going to be called the pour-over will because everything in the trust, or because everything in the will pours over into the trust upon death. That revocable living trust, like we said, can be edited or changed throughout their life. The schedule of assets is going to list all the assets that you have. It's a dynamic list that can change, of course, during the course of your life. And then the certification or summary of trust, sort of a mini version of the trust built to withhold some of the more personal information or decisions within your trust that is sometimes shared with advisors or banks or credit unions. But of course, the goal here with the trust-based plan, avoiding probate, ensuring everything stays private, and also ensuring that everything is passed along to the next generation as seamlessly as possible.
Right. Good. So, on my website, I talk about wanting to help families create generational wealth, and these legal documents are so important because you could end up spending money unnecessarily, or your estate and trying to, your heirs and trying to settle your estate can spend money unnecessarily that could be used for better purposes. It gives, in creating a trust, depending on how it's worded and created, it gives you the opportunity to try and stretch out your net wealth over a reasonable period of time instead of giving it to people right up front. And maybe some people are going to be more inclined to spend that money as quickly as possible. Maybe they need to have some restraints put on it. So all sorts of good reasons why we should review our estate plan and see if our documents are in. Number one, make sure we have the legal documents. Number two, make sure they reflect where we are in our life. Even if you have some of these, maybe it requires that you update them. Mm-hmm. So, So, Michael, I don't have any additional questions for you. I think this has been great. I appreciate your time. I really like what your company is doing because, again, it's, I know I look pretty young, but I've been in this business. You shouldn't be smiling when I say that. And you definitely shouldn't be laughing when I say it. But I've been in this business a long time, and that's one of my pet frustrations is people will come to me, they'll want to do a comprehensive financial plan. And I know that honestly, I think legal documents are the easiest thing to do, but people procrastinate on getting them done because you don't need them. It's like insurance. You don't need it until you need it. So,
right. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So, having said that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Again, you can find the link by just going to my website, or you in the YouTube video that we're creating here, we'll have a link to your information below. Perfect. Not you specifically. We don't want people waking you in the middle of the night. But, we'll put a link to wills of trust, and so anybody who wants to can link in there. So again, thanks, Michael. I really appreciate you taking the time. Really valuable information.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Drew. Appreciate it.
Okay.